Hi everyone, and welcome to week 7 of your pharmacy software course. This week we are going to be covering Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is all about entering intravenous medication compounds. The one thing that I really want to point out to you before we get into anything in the book per se is when we're talking about any type of IV medication, the most important thing to remember is how important our calculations are. Keep in mind that intravenous medications are going straight into the patient's bloodstream, and what that means is that they're going to be absorbed into the body much quicker. So anything that's wrong will affect the patient much more quickly than a medication that's taken by mouth or subcutaneously or something along those lines. So making sure that we do these types of calculations for these types of compounds correctly is going to be very, very important. So as we look at this particular chapter, the one thing that I want to make sure to remind you of is that this is actually very similar to what we did in the last chapter. It is still entering a compound, so we're going to do much of the same steps that we did before. So you're going to want to make sure that you are checking to see if the medication is already there. So as we go in and we start working with these different medications, you're going to want to go to this drug screen. You're going to want to search for those particular drugs to see what's already in there and what do we need to add. Because if the things that are making the compound are not here, we have to do that first. So keep that in mind. We have to enter that first before we can actually go in and enter the compound. Now, the one thing that they did not provide for you in Chapter 6 that they are providing for you in Chapter 7 is an NDC that's basically like a dummy NDC that you can use when you're ready to enter the compound. So when you get ready to actually do a compound formula, okay, you can enter that NDC that's on page 75. It's in the last sentence of the second to the last paragraph, and it's just giving you a generic NDC that you can use. So keep that in mind that you can, use that NDC or any other combinations of like all zeros, all nines, something like that to create a dummy NDC for these compounds as you're going through and doing them. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out to you this week, keep in mind that when we're doing an intravenous compound, it's going to basically contain two or more things. So you're going to have a drug or more than one drug, depending on what you're doing, and something that you're putting it into. So you're always going to have that medication or medications and the vehicle for it. So how is it going to get into your bloodstream? Are we putting it into normal saline? Are we adding it to a dextrose bag? What are we putting it in? And most of the time it is going to be some sort of sodium chloride, some normal saline bag, which if you look on page 79, for exercise 3, notice that on all of them, the fluid that you're using is going to be normal saline. Sodium chloride 0.9% is considered normal saline. So all but one are going to be normal saline. And then they're giving you the drug that's going into it. Now, in real life, we could have more than one drug in a compound, but for this particular exercise, you're just doing one medication and one intravenous fluid. Okay. You'll also want to make sure that you're entering the infusion rate as part of the SIG code for those. Now, let's talk a little bit about the directions for your assignment this week. You're doing all 3 exercises 1, 2, and 3. In exercise 1, you are going to actually go through and list the different steps that you have to go through in order to be able to enter a medication and an IV fluid if they're not already in the drug inventory. So what we just talked about, how do you put a brand new drug in? Okay, not the compound, the individual pieces of the compound. Okay, so basically walking us through those steps from one of those previous chapters that we did. So that's exercise 1. You're just going to type it up in your Word document. Exercise 2 is talking about the different types of facilities that might be using IV medications other than a hospital. So like a long-term care pharmacy, a home health pharmacy, and what do you have to supply along with the IV in order for it to be utilized. So take a moment, do some research on that website, dig a little bit. Don't just think that when you click on the website, the answer is going to be right there. You're going to have to dig sometimes on these websites. So click on that, dig around a little bit, and make a list. That's exercise 2. And then exercise 3 is going to be creating these 10 compounds. So ultimately, for this one, you're going to have 10 screenshots. So I want a screenshot for each of these compounds that you make. So exercise 1 and 2 is just lists, answering those questions on the Word document. Exercise 3 is going to be screenshots at the end of the document, a total of 10 screenshots. So if you have any problems or questions as you're going through the material this week, please make sure that you reach out to me, and have a great week.